NOI Education Services, and I am coming to you today as part of our TAS 2024 series. And of course, we are talking about who is your cohort. Now, obviously, as part of the refresh of the TAS that you would be doing as part of your annual review, it's really important to consider who is the cohort that you're training. I think this becomes even more important when we start delving into the new RTO standards that are coming into effect from 1/1/25, and that is because there is far more of a focus on the training, not just on the assessment. As the feedback that came through from a lot of the consultations was that over the last couple of years, it become such a strong focus on assessment, and I think it has actually led a lot of RTOs to really just go straight into assessment. This is particularly true in the CRICOS models, and we really do need to focus on making sure that there is time for training. So some of the new standards basically says 1.1 says the training delivered is engaging and well structured and enables learners to attain skills and knowledge consistently with the training product. So obviously going to be very different depending on the cohort that you're dealing with. Learners with prior skills, knowledge, and competencies are supported to seek RPL. Let's see what else we have here. The learners have access to clear and accurate information. Learners are informed about enrollment. Learners' training support needs are identified. Reasonable adjustments are made to support learners with disabilities. The training environment promotes and supports the well-being of students. We're going to get into that in a lot more detail. But I mean, just in general, what we're actually looking at through these standards is that we actually have put a lot of thought into it. So when we delve like very specifically, it says the RTO demonstrates the training is consistent with the requirements of the training product. Modes of delivery enable the learners to attain the skills and knowledge consistent with the training product. Training is structured and paced. And I think that word is going to become very important. It's structured and paced to support learners to progress, providing sufficient time for instruction, practice, feedback, and assessment. I think this is going to be huge. Training facilitation techniques, activities, and resources engage and motivate learners. That is potentially going to be a little bit problematic. And support learner understanding. So none of this can actually be done without having a really good understanding of who our student cohort is. So some of the things that I think that you need to consider when you're starting to plan out your delivery and for your student cohort is obviously one, the age of the learners. Okay, so are we going to be dealing with under 18s? Are we going to be dealing with people in that 18 to 24 range who, you know, maybe have a little bit of life experience, but are still relatively new to the workforce? Are we going to be dealing with people who are, you know, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s? Okay, because, you know, that's going to have an impact on the amount of knowledge that they're going to have coming into that workplace in a lot of aspects. So number one that we definitely need to consider is age. The second point is whether is their general level of work experience. Now, obviously, you are going to find if you are delivering to trainees, you may find, depending on the qualification and depending on the cohort, they have anywhere from like 2 to 3 years experience to 30 years experience. And that will make a big difference. But in general, when you're like, you need to determine if you're dealing with people who have knowledge of the industry or who are brand new to knowledge of the industry, because that's going to make a difference as to a lot of those foundational skills, the level of foundational skills that they're coming in with, and how much you're going to have to explain and train on things like terminology from the industry. So if you're dealing with more experienced people, then, you know, you can reduce that training time because you're focusing on particular elements and aspects of the training more than likely, and some of those foundational skills are kind of going to be baked into the cake as what we would expect. So number one, training, number one, age. Number two, are they workforce or are they you know, do they not have experience in the workforce? Then it's going to be for your cohort, you're going to be looking at existing skills and knowledge. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of things that can technically factor into this. So for example, what we might be looking at is like, does the qualification actually have a prerequisite? So therefore, they're automatically going to have knowledge. You may be running a short course and, 90% of the cohort within that short course already holds a qualification related to the field. So we see a lot of this in things like, telecommunications, cybersecurity, the civil construction, where you've got people who hold a base level qualification and they're doing some kind of additional bolt-on upskilling. So again, a lot of the foundational skills, a lot of the industry terminology, a lot of that is going to be baked into the cake. You're going to have an expectation that they're coming in understanding that, and that should be documented through your TAS. So you're basically explaining, here are the existing skills and knowledge of the learners that we are expecting to come into this cohort. That's also going to filter through into your marketing, is that, the typical student would be expected to have X, Y, and Z sort of a skills. And then we're going to look at also things like learner needs. Okay, so for example, if we're dealing with people who are long-term unemployed, if we're dealing with job seekers, if we're dealing with, if we're catering training to a group of mums who are returning to work after, taking care of the family for, 10 years. If we're dealing with people who are in their, 60s who are looking at making a massive job change or having to return to work because retiree funds are drying up. They're going to come with their own different learner cohort needs. So things that we want to consider when we start to look into this are, what is the broad LLN levels of the group going to be like? Are they English second language? Do they have previous qualifications? Are they expected that they might have a degree or have participated in higher education? Is it expected that there are potentially going to be significant learner well-being needs? If you're dealing with, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders out in regional Australia where there is, not a lot of access to training, you're going to be dealing with, you're going to need to take into account the learner needs of the cohort. If you're dealing with young kids in civil, looking at doing like a pre-apprenticeship, you might be looking at kids who have, historically felt very uncomfortable in a classroom, who have not wanted to participate in a classroom. How are you going to develop that training strategy? Because it's not so much the assessment strategy that you need to focus on in those cases. One of the biggest challenges that you may have is actually getting the cohort to actually show up every day. And that can affect, there's a whole bunch of different things that can affect. International students can have a challenge of actually making them show up every day when they really don't want to. As I said, young kids who are maybe doing a pre-apprenticeship because they have not participated enough in school, or they're not really interested in going through an ATAR pathway. Long-term unemployed people who, again, might have various well-being needs, might have trauma issues that we need to deal with. So it is about actually spending a little bit more time, I think, not just talking about things from the point of view of volume of learning, amount of training, which is very much what the TASs have focused on for the last 2 to 3 years, but spend a lot more time going into your cohort, the needs of your cohort, the existing skills and knowledge of your cohort, and then making a very clear roadmap for how the training that you have built is going to support that cohort through progression to competency. And again, with that focus on, sufficient time for instruction, practice, feedback, and then assessment. And some of those things will absolutely weave together. But you need to be thinking about that. And certainly over the last couple of years, we've definitely seen the regulator want to see clear differentiation between the training side and the assessment side. They acknowledge that there is some crossover in certain areas. But again, I think this is where we're going to need to be very clear and start to elaborate and think about our training programs from that perspective of when are we doing instruction, practice, and feedback, and when are we doing summative assessment. And making sure that we're not literally saying, okay, well, we're going to do a 2-day course. The first 3 hours is going to be instruction, practice, and feedback. And then the last 12 hours is going to be assessment. When we're dealing with a new cohort, it's probably not going to fly. It might fly with an existing cohort that's already got competencies related in the fields, but it's certainly not going to fly when we're talking about people who are brand new to the industry, who don't have any knowledge and skills. We need to build in that time for practice and feedback. So that's a little bit about who is your cohort, thinking about some of the factors, some of the ways to go about explaining it. If you do want if you do need a TAS template, or if you do want us to do a validation on your TASs, you are more than welcome to reach out to Lauren or Laura at anawaya.org. We do have a brand new set of policies and procedures that are coming out. They are all fully mapped to the new 2025 standards, and they're also going to be coming out with a fantastic support series via video, just like this, specifically contextualized around Anawaya's policies and procedures. If you guys have any questions, by all means, give us a buzz. Like, subscribe, all those good things, and you'll have lots more coming out over the next couple of weeks. My name is Lauren Hollows for Anawaya Education Services.